I played Harvestella for 15 days in the game, and I just want to let you know what to expect from this new farming RPG from Square Enix. Does it deliver on its promise? We'll go over the mechanics, the shops, the combat at a closer look, and I'll tell you why the end of my gameplay felt a little off. So hit that subscribe button if you like games like this, and let's go. The story kicks you off as a mostly silent protagonist with amnesia. You know the drill, but hey, guess what? It's not your grandpa's farm you inherit like other farming RPGs. Or maybe it is and they just haven't told me yet. The character creator is pretty simple. It gives you a handful of different models to choose from. You can pick your gender male, female, or non-binary, and the game doesn't restrict your character model based on this decision, thankfully. The beginning of the game has so much story and dialogue, lots of world building and introduction. I think it's done really well. This is an RPG after all, so expect the dialogue. But I'm happy they mostly aren't cutscenes, they're mostly text boxes, which are a little more engaging and interactive to me. Apparently the people at this town are super nice because strange and dangerous things have been happening in this world, and you mysteriously show up withholding any information, claiming you know absolutely nothing, and they just hand you a house and a farm, and send you sandwiches in the mail. Yes, there's a mailbox in this game just as you'd expect, and you can even get a newspaper in there. I thought that was a really cool touch because it ties the world together, gives you a recap, and really just sells the atmosphere and community in my opinion. The first several days of the game are pretty on rails, but after that, it opens up. Here's the gameplay loop that we'll go into with a little bit more detail here in a second. You wake up, check your mail, plant your seeds, water the plants, and harvest your crops. After upgrading your farm a little bit, you'll get some animals to tend to as well. Then it's off to the dungeon area to gather seeds, fight some enemies, and further the story. You'll have to head home before it gets too late though, or your visibility will get really low until you completely pass out. Then you get to wake up and do it all over again, occasionally heading to the village in between runs to get supplies and upgrade your stuff. This pattern isn't too groundbreaking these days. It all comes down to the details and how well it's implemented. So let's talk about the farm. First of all, it looks really beautiful, and so does this whole game. In fact, maybe a little too beautiful because the entire thing is covered in this blurry, foggy haze kind of, at least on Switch. And even then, the system can't handle it that well, especially on the farm where there's so much going on. The frame rate drops below 30 and it looks really choppy. Really, just dial back these visuals a little bit. I don't really need this much grass everywhere. But at least I can say you do get used to it and the frame rate isn't as bad when you really need it. Like when you're in the dungeon fighting enemies. Your land consists of the farming area right outside your house, but also has these extra plots sectioned apart, which seem really cool. This whole place is kind of big. You can really tell there's room for progression and expansion. There's a whole water farming area I couldn't go to yet, maybe for growing rice, and even a couple extra pathways that you need to unlock with bombs. This actually kind of reminded me of Slime Rancher. I do like the idea of being able to unlock new areas as I go. Also on your farm, there's an item box where you can leave items you want to sell overnight, and then you'll wake up with money in your pocket. The inside of your house looks really cool. It's nice and cozy with the fireplace always going. It has 2 beds, which is interesting, and there's also a crafting table and a kitchen for cooking. Cooking in this game is really important. Your health and stamina rely on it. The crafting table lets you make tools and repair kits and other items that will help you progress through the dungeons that we'll talk about here in a bit. The coolest thing though in your house has to be the upstairs loft. It's just this big empty space, and I'm really hoping we can bring items here and really decorate it and customize it however we want. You also have a storage box in this house, and the really cool thing that I like is that your storage in this game is perpetual. Let me know if that's the right word, but basically what I'm saying is when you put items in your box, you can access them from any storage box in the game. Whether it's the one on your farm or a storage box out in the dungeon. I really wish a lot more games implemented this. It just makes inventory management a little easier and a little more magical. And before we talk about the dungeons and combat, let's talk about the village. As a fairly socially deprived person, I really like towns and villages. And again, the design here is really well done. Everything looks stylish and cozy. You can go fishing here, loot some chests, talk to the townsfolk, and visit a few shops. On the topic of chests though, I honestly wish there was more of an animation or some type of exciting sound effect. When you open one up in this game, you get a notification off to the right with what you found, but that's it. I'd love to even just have a little item icon with a plus sign floating out of the chest. Something to make it feel a little more exciting and rewarding. And the chests don't disappear, so if I found one behind a house, it's just there, opened forever, and just kind of hanging out. It just seems a little weird. The 3 main shops you'll go to are the general store, blacksmith, and renovator. At the general store, you can buy seeds, trees, backpack upgrades, and even skills, apparently. Yes, if you want to be able to fish, you have to buy the knowledge to do so. Honestly, I think that would be more satisfying to learn through a character or other gameplay, but it's nice to see you might have various skills to work towards. You can also buy equipment and accessories to give yourself different stats and attributes to help in battle. I do feel like the seeds are kind of expensive though. I guess the game really wants to encourage you to get your seeds from the dungeon. But also this is early game, so I probably just didn't have my money saved up yet. The blacksmith is simple enough, bring materials and money to upgrade your gear, but what I'm really excited about is the renovator. This is where you can unlock the kitchen for your house and upgrades for your farm. Again, just bring money and materials here, and after a day's time, you'll be all fixed up. Looks like you'll be getting access to chickens and sheep and hopefully other animals. To make these animal pens, you'll need wood and stone, and from what I've seen so far, there's no chopping down trees with an axe in this game. Wood and stone seem to mostly be random resources you collect in the dungeon area. I wish it was a little more interactive than that. I know you can craft a hammer to take care of huge rocks, but I just don't see enough trees in this game to imagine we'll be getting an axe. Some will like that and some won't. I personally like chopping things down, but let me know how you feel about that in the comments. The townsfolk seem cool enough to me, with little pieces of dialogue here and there. You can even go inside their homes, but it doesn't seem like you can interact with pretty much anything inside. No items to grab, and you can't open their dressers or anything. If you find a chest inside though, you can open that. And the villagers will kick you out after a certain time too. One thing you'll notice is that the graphics are much sharper indoors, and the frame rate is much smoother too. There's also a section at the end of town that the game has to load for you to get to, and it also has much better performance. So the game definitely produces different results depending on the size of the area and what's going on in the map. It's kind of sad though, and it makes you realize how nice it would have been if the whole game ran this well. The last thing I'll mention about this town is that the music is done really well. Same thing back at the farm. This soundtrack is just really nice to listen to. It's filled with lots of flute, piano, classical guitar. It fits the atmosphere perfectly. So let's talk about the dungeons and combat. This is the biggest piece of the gameplay loop, and you'll be spending a lot of time here, so this can really make or break Harvestella. If you don't go in the dungeons, you can't further the story, and there isn't much else to do, so this is very much a main focus of the game and not a side activity. The dungeons are really pretty and filled with enemies and resources. You can pick up things like monster parts, seeds, wood, and ore, things you can take back home to use for cooking and crafting. Now, I mentioned how important cooking is in this game, and that's because so much of what you do relies on stamina. And stamina relies on food. You even have a hunger meter, and I think all of this sounds good on paper, but this constant management, for me, isn't fun. Okay, it's kind of interesting how it's all a little mini game on its own, but it just ends up being a little tedious. See, once your hunger meter fills all the way up, you can't eat anything else. The problem here is food is also used for recovering your health. This means if you've already filled up your stomach, you can't eat more food, and so you'll die if that was your only way to regain HP. Not to mention, even gathering resources takes stamina. Yep, if your stamina is not high enough, you can't pick up items laying on the ground. You'll need to eat food to stay strong, and that in itself can be a rare commodity. While on the topic of resources too, another interesting thing is how much they leave to the imagination. There can be a random spot on the ground and you don't know if it's going to be a mushroom or if the game's going to tell you that you're mining ore. There's no pickaxe, no animation, and no rock in sight. It seems to be all pretend. Sometimes you'll even see a shiny spot on a tree or the ground, and when you go up to it, there's dialogue narrating events that are supposed to be taking place, and you're just left to read it while actually seeing nothing happen. I initially found this to be kind of cool until I started to notice a pattern. Let's talk about the combat real quick. It's pretty simple action RPG style. Just spam the attack button. You don't start off with any dodging ability, which feels kind of weird, but I assume we can unlock it. You see, fighting enemies gives you job points. These are skill points you can spend to gain new moves, abilities, and improvements to various stats. You have different jobs too that you can switch to on the fly. Jobs are essentially classes that you can choose to put your points into, like fighter or magic. Some enemies will require one or the other to defeat, so it kind of keeps you on your toes. Changing your job will also change your appearance, which is a nice touch. Speaking of progression, whether you die in battle, stay up too late and pass out, or go home and sleep, you'll always wake up in your bed at your house. And if applicable, you'll level up. This results in the increase of your health and attack power. I think this is kind of nice because even if you keep dying, you'll get stronger and the dungeon will get easier. But here's a problem. There's just too much back and forth between your house and the dungeon. I know that's the loop, but I just don't feel like they play off each other very well. It seems a little forced, and it feels like you're just trying to progress, but then you get sent back home. This results in a lot of running through the same dungeon areas again and again. Yes, they do have ladders and bridges you can repair along the way that act as shortcuts for when you come back, and you do get warp points. But even then, every area just looks exactly the same, and it feels the same. Not really a place you want to keep coming back to. I feel like these dungeon areas are just too repetitive, drawn out, and lifeless. Enemies don't flinch or seem to react to your attacks, and before you even walk up to them, they're just kind of like standing there staring at the wall. By the time I got to the boss and kept dying, I just didn't even feel motivated to keep trying to figure out how to beat it. There's something empty feeling with this game, and I think it has a lot of potential, but I also think it could use some calibrating to really make it click and give it more personality. Kind of a disappointment because the beginning starts off so strong. But what do you think? Does this sound like a game you're interested in? You can always download the demo, which is what this video is based off of, and let us know what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know if it's just me or not. If you like Nintendo Switch and videos like this one, please consider hitting that subscribe button, and then tap one of those boxes on your screen, and I'll see you over there in another one.